All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, all. It is another glorious Tuesday. We love Tuesdays on this show. I'm Mark. You see Kim is here at her post, Tony at his. I'm hoping the garbled nature of my opening yesterday is avoided. Is it a problem today as well?
It sounds fine, but you're low.
Yeah, you sound soft.
You sound real low. Just push you up yourself on the board.
You what, Tony? I'm over this. Tony, you know, we pay all this money for it. Is it better now? It's not better now?
Did you change your level on the board?
I didn't touch anything, dude.
No. Just push.
Uh-oh.
Just push it up a little bit.
Oh my God.
You're gonna knock the stuff off the shelves.
Just push your mic up a bit.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Test. Oh my God, people, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You think David Muir has to worry about this crap? I mean, I'm asking you. Do you think Nora O'Donnell at CBS has to worry about this? No. Is that better, Tony?
Possibly. I'll find out. I'll listen to another source.
Guys, says Craig. Craig, you're going to be working here soon.
Cool.
We need more Craig in this game. I blame Mark, says Cheryl Massarelli. Yes, well. Chill, broski, says Craig. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna chill, broski. I want to get right into things today. David Cay Johnson joins in hour 2. You'll tell me, Tony, don't let it go. If the level is bad, something has to be changed, please tell me. We'll talk about a week in which Donald Trump will find himself in one way or another in many courtrooms. So we'll get to that second hour. The Pulitzer Prize winner joins us. In this first hour, Jefferson Graham on Tech Tuesday. We'll slide in here. But last night, first, I want to do this, a conversation quickly about the debate last night. Last night, there was a debate for the seat that we'll be voting on, the Senate seat vacated by Dianne Feinstein. So I want to get right into it now.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Because they faced off in a special debate. I watched the entire thing, as I think did Kim and Tony watched it. A lot of other Californians are going to be making decisions. These debates are never perfect, and maybe far from perfect, but nonetheless they do put the candidates on the spot in certain ways that are revealing often. And today, he's agreed to join us, the debate moderator from last night, KTLA's Frank Buckley. How about you? Nice job last night, sir.
How you doing?
Yeah,
thanks a lot,
I'm
Mark.
well. You did a nice job last night. I thought that was an inventive thing that you guys did with that follow-up. The follow-up feature was a really cool feature. For those who might have missed it, can you kind of remind us what happened last night? After they answer a question, you have a follow-up. Oh, why can't I hear Frank? Why can I not hear Frank? I just heard him a second ago, Tony.
Am I
Try
here?
it now. Yeah, now I hear you. Go ahead.
You hear me? Okay. What we did is we gave people, for most of the questions, we said you have 60 seconds. Obviously, the candidates were all briefed in advance, and then we would give them a follow-up of either 30 seconds or 15 seconds. Because, as we all know, frequently in these debates, people tend to launch into their talking points, their stump speech, and we don't want them to do that. We wanted to drill down on the questions and these particular policies or issues, and get them to give us a real answer. And so we would say, as I just said, the question was blank, and you have 15 seconds.
Yeah, I thought what was so great about it was that, as you say, it's not even talking points on the issue. They would do that two-step that politicians do where they shuffle away from the question completely. And so it was so great for two reasons. A, you remind us that this candidate has not addressed the question that was asked. And second, you get the candidate to maybe address the question. That's why I thought it was a really interesting feature. I think it should be adopted in more debates.
Thank you. And it's something that our team from Nexstar, our Nexstar stations, they're very good at these things. The Chris Berg, the guy who runs our debates team, they just have a format, and the candidates have come to know this format across the country. And the political consultants who work for the candidates know that we're going to be fair, but we're also going to press them on the issues. And so, I think that's what we did last night.
What were the potential takeaways from last night? I'm not asking you to score it. I'm just asking you for your general sense of how things were for everyone involved.
I think that, Adam Schiff, as the front runner, wanted to not make news. And I think he succeeded. He stayed, senatorial, as some people have described him after the first debate, tried to hit the issues but not make news. I think he succeeded in that sense. It's obviously a battle for number two right now. And Katie Porter and Steve Garvey are going for number two. Barbara Lee has been stuck in single digits in the polls, and she needed a breakout night, or had hoped to have a breakout night. I don't know that she did. And to get her, propel her beyond the single digits that she has been in. And Steve Garvey and Katie Porter, I was somewhat surprised that Katie Porter didn't go after Steve Garvey in the way that she did in the first debate. You might recall she had the zinger, once a Dodger, always a Dodger, when she asked him about whether he was going to vote for Donald Trump. Once again, Steve Garvey did not reveal that or much of anything else with regard to what he plans to do about things. He has run a campaign so far, as it were, if you want to call it a campaign. It hasn't been much of a sort of a traditional campaign, but his campaign has largely been, I'm not those guys. I'm a Republican in a state that hasn't voted a Republican into the Senate since 1988. These guys are career politicians, and they've ruined the state. Again, these are his words, not mine, and that's why you should vote for me. He largely stuck to that script.
Frank, it's interesting because we're talking to Frank Buckley, who was the moderator of last night's debate between those who are vying for Dianne Feinstein's seat in California.
And by the way, let me just say that I'm in an Uber driven by Douglas, who's a fine driver, and that's why I'm wearing a seatbelt. You want to say hi, Douglas? Hello. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Say hi. Hello, Mark Thomas and your fans. Yeah, Thompson.
It's Thompson, but okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've got a big Uber driver community up there in the Bay Area. When we were on KGO, I would bump into an Uber once in a while, and they were listeners. So very, very cool.
I think he just misheard me. Of course, we were talking earlier about how much he loved Mark Thompson on KGO
all right, Frank,
for years and years.
All right,
years.
I don't know. I just don't get.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell I do it for.
Okay, let's get back to the conversation. It's funny because you're talking about Garvey kind of playing the outsider, and I feel as though Katie Porter has sort of cast herself as the outsider from the inside, meaning she doesn't take corporate PAC money. She rails against the institutions of mainstream politics, beholden to that money. I heard a little bit of that last night. I see more of it in her campaign ads than I heard last night from her.
Yeah, that's certainly her role here. And Adam Schiff had a line sort of teed up and ready to go on that. He said something to the effect of, you can't walk down the halls of Congress without tripping over five members of Congress who say they're going to shake things up and change things, but they don't get anything done.
Yeah, that was a good line, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that sort of put her on her heels, but I also think that for Katie Porter, and all the Democrats actually, after the first debate, there was some suggestion that when they gang up on Steve Garvey, it helps Steve Garvey. And so maybe that might be part of it as well, that the idea was not to gang up on Steve Garvey, because that helps him to coalesce the Republicans, and that might be part of it. But to your question about Katie Porter and her outsider status, I quizzed her on that very topic. I said that you've been in Congress for more than 5 years. You paint yourself as an outsider. You have just last week introduced a 10-point housing plan to address homelessness. Why did it take so long? And, she answered it by saying this has been her life's work, actually, of taking on, mortgage finance companies and big lenders and that sort of thing, and trying to help people in housing. So
she answered it well. And you in the follow-up, as I recall, sort of held her feet to the fire. You said, yeah, but how come you've just introduced it? It was an interesting moment. And I thought she handled that as well as she could.
Yeah. And again, the way we try to craft these questions is not to make it seem like, we're not trying to do gotcha questions, but we're asking questions that I think, voters may have. Are you really an outsider or not? And she had an answer for that.
The question that you asked, I'm chuckling a bit because you guys really were insistent on this, and I felt you really held everybody's feet to the fire on this, was do they believe that Biden, who's 81, and Trump, who's 77, are too old to be running for the presidency for a second term? And everyone essentially said, no, they're not too old, which I thought was somewhat predictable, but how they got there was interesting.
Yeah, and obviously, two of the candidates on the stage are in their mid to late 70s.
Exactly.
Steve Garvey and Barbara Lee. So it's a little awkward for them to now say, yeah, those two guys, they're too old, because 77 plus 6 and 75 plus 6 puts you into the same sort of age bracket. The one person who opened the door to a conversation on that was Katie Porter. Of course, she's the youngest in the group, but she did suggest, and the polling suggests, or our polling, the next to our media, Emerson College Inside California Politics polling, shows that more than 70% of people think that there should be age limits. So there is a conversation going on in the community, and so we thought it was valid to bring that up.
They're asking in our chat if we can set up a poll, those who saw the debate last night, who won it, quote, won it, or how they saw it. Tony, can you do that or not? As we finish up with Mr. Buckley, who's very generously given us his time are you heading to the airport now, Frank?
I am indeed. And, Mark, I'd do anything for you. Actually, that's not true at all. I didn't have anything to do during this Uber ride. So
thank you. Well, all kidding aside, I've been trying to get Frank on the show since we've had a show, and this is the first time that we've done it, and it's actually at a real inflection moment. So I really thank you. The other thing I want to quickly sort of finish up with, or kind of begin to round up with, is the minimum wage. The minimum wage issue was interesting. You hit. There was something of it reminds you of the real progressive agenda when you comes through Barbara Lee, who wants a $50 minimum wage. Again, that's like a lightning bolt when you realize that it's, what is that, 7 times the national average?
That's right. I mean, we're talking about 7, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. 750?
Yeah, 725 is the national average. Yeah,
725 is the federal minimum wage, and she is suggesting $50 an hour. And I think part of that is related to the fact she is from the Bay Area, where, as you know, to live in San Francisco or in the Bay Area in general, it does require a significant income to be able to afford a meaningful life. But it is a huge difference from her counterparts. Schiff and Porter are in the $20 to $25 range, so it's a huge gap.
Yeah, that's the federal minimum wage, 7.25. If I said average, I'm sorry. The last thing I'll ask you is, being in San Francisco on the weekend of the Super Bowl, in which the Niners, I thought, played very well, but obviously it didn't finish well. Any sense of that? Was traffic moving more slowly? Were people dejected?
We were working out of the Cron newsroom, so yes, people were dejected. There were all of these dreams of the parade and the the celebrations. Some of the people who worked on the assignment desk or would be involved in coverage maybe weren't as dejected because, you never know it's going to have a Super Bowl win.
Oh,
So
sure.
they had a very long day. But, yes, they were not happy overall.
And on your way out, did you see any public urination or defecation or shooting up publicly? I mean, that's one of our proud features of the city for visitors.
No, we were staying down near the Embarcadero, and it was lovely.
San Francisco is a beautiful city.
It sure is.
It's got some problems right now, but I really hope they can clean them up because it's a spectacular place. Frank,
it really is.
You're the best, man. Thank you for taking some time. You did a great job last night. I really thought the debate was good. As I say, there were features of that debate that I've not seen in others that I hope other debates will pick up on. And I look forward to visiting again. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, my friend. Take care.
Frank Buckley, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who won the debate? We have it up now. This is a completely scientific poll. This is totally science. We had our best scientists put this together. Normally, you'll hear people say, this isn't a scientific poll. That's not what we do here. We do only scientific polls. That's right.
The science is ridiculous.
All right. Well, so we applied our ridiculous science to this question. Who won the debate last night? Please feel free to vote if you saw the debate. I think it's kind of important to have seen the debate in order to participate in who won the debate. So again, judging from that poll, it was who? Tony. I can see Katie Porter. Yeah, wow.
I don't know. You're talking to Tony, but I think it's Dr. Emil Schaffhausen who's really in charge of the poll.
Well, we did always... Emil Schaffhausen. He was involved, as he is in most things that involve science, on this show with it. But it's interesting that this audience feels as though it was Katie Porter who won, when I think you could poll Californians who are a little more mainstream, maybe, and they would say, I think Adam Schiff won. Because I thought
mainstream.
Yeah, I think that
is it mainstream only if it's the guy that you're supporting? Or
no.
Maybe Katie Porter's are mainstream too.
I'm making a point about how he's an institutional Democrat. That's the point I'm making. Would you like to challenge that point?
No, but you know what I would like to say is that you know that you have made it big when you're doing interviews from the back seat of your Uber.
Yes.
I mean, that's when you know you have really arrived. I think that might be the first time on the Mark Thompson Show that we had a live Uber connection, and the connection stayed pretty good through the ride.
Yeah, he was, and he's good. He's very good. That Frank Buckley, very handsome too. Yeah. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let me just pick up a couple of, were there any... As a scientist, I certify that I have peer-reviewed this poll, and it is indeed science. There you go. I mean, I like that.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
It's clean science is our poll, and I hope you'll participate in the poll now. Wes says, hey, what up? Wes with a $5 super sticker.
Big shout
Thank you,
out.
Wes. We're a crowd-funded show, so appreciate super stickers and super chats, always. The poll is as accurate about any poll I've seen, says Russ. Well, yes. Look, our poll is a measure of something. I don't know exactly what, but it is a measure of something. There was just because we're talking about California, I was going to talk about this later, but I can maybe talk about it now. There was a story today, speaking of polls, just wild. There's a poll about California and the way people view California. And this poll has California viewed as not really American by half of the Republicans polled. I mean, here we are, this place, I think, of dreams and prosperity and beautiful nature and the spectacle of everything good, the land of plenty in many ways, right? I think that's the reputation I always associated with California anyway. Nationwide, 50% of U.S. adults believe the state is in decline, according to this new survey for the LA Times. Now, make no mistake, political polarization has amplified all of this negativity. 48% of Republicans, as I say, believe the state is, quote, not really American. 3 in 10 Republicans say the home of Yosemite's sheer peaks and Sequoia's towering redwoods and Malibu's beaches has a worse natural environment than other states.
What?
Wow.
Nearly 40% of Republicans don't even think California is a good place to visit.
Good. Don't come here.
Yeah, exactly.
Good day, sir.
A majority in both parties say they have been to the state of California. They surveyed just over 1,000 adults, and this is a firm out of Canada that has polled extensively in the U.S. They're called Ledger, L-E-G-E-R. And Republicans, it may be of no surprise to you, more in agreement that California is in decline. As to whether California is in decline, 52% of Republicans say yes, 29% of independents, and only 12% of Democrats. If you're a conservative American, you basically do not like California, is the quote from Christian Bork, who's the executive vice president of the organization that, as I say, this Leger, I think they're Canadian, maybe they say it like that. He's the poll supervisor. We all expected some of that, he says, but the differences are actually quite striking. California has, however, and this might be much more important than the first part, although the first part is a grabby headline, you're right, that, California is viewed as un-American by Republicans. That's a grabby headline. California has maintained its reputation as a new frontier among who? Young people. Younger Americans are more likely to say that California is a trendsetter for the country. 29% agree with that. 40% somewhat agree with it. Only 8% completely disagree. That's among in a demographic 18 to 34. 6 in 10 adults nationwide think the state is a trendsetter, and that is and has had a positive impact on the country. And again, younger people still le gusta California. They like it. People who see racism as an important issue in the U.S., for example, are more than twice as likely to think California is a good place to visit than are those who think racism is unimportant. So you begin to see political biases and philosophical biases and lifestyle and cultural biases in here. Californians do have notably different views than the rest of the country on some issues. Abortion stands out. Nearly half, 46% of Californians, say abortion should be legal in all cases. That's a view shared by just over 1 in 4 adults nationwide. So in California, we are more progressive and more liberal-leaning in some of these different areas of political philosophy.
Republicans think our standard of living is worse than other states here in California, which is weird to me. Why would you think that?
Here's why. I would suggest, I don't agree, of course, but I can at least make the argument that the cost of living here is so high that you are unable to really provide yourself with the standard of living, if you want to think of it this way,
I see.
That you might be able to in many other states.
Right.
You take your bag of magic beans, money, to California, and those beans don't go as far.
Because all we can afford is a grungy apartment on the dirtiest street with the trash strewn across the sidewalk?
Well, when you say it like that, it's, thank you. Yeah.
Got it.
But I just think this is the only reason I care so passionately about California is I think there's so much great about California. The idea that you could in any way look at the natural resources of California and not be in absolute wonderment at how spectacular it is, it astounds me. I mean, we're the breadbasket of the world in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you have these wondrous outdoor spaces, whatever you want, you have this brilliant incubator for invention and innovation in Silicon Valley and beyond. I get it. You can talk about regulation and taxes and cost of living. Of course, these things coexist. But the idea that you could be so down on California feels like just straight out partisanship to me, you know. I do think, as I was saying to Frank Buckley, we got to clean up our act. We got to get tougher and clean up our act. But it's hard to hire cops, as you know, for those who feel we need more cops in San Francisco, and I'm guessing that's most people. And when I say San Francisco, I mean Oakland also, you know, and San Jose, et cetera, the Bay Area, and across Southern California, too, in Los Angeles. They need cops. Fewer and fewer people want to be cops. So to the extent that that's required to clean up some of the issues in the city, you also need, you know, sound strategies when it comes to homelessness, et cetera. But anyway, the cultural clashes, I thought, really came forward in this study and this most recent poll. And as I say, I guess we're all un-American, according to almost half those polled in this new survey. When we come back, I have a lot, actually.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have Jefferson Graham. He has a new consumer product that you may use, particularly if you're a content creator. If you're someone who does Instagram posts, you have even maybe a YouTube channel or a show or a podcast or any number of things. This is a consumer product that you might be interested in. And also, I waited on this a day. The trashing of the robo-cars, driverless cars in San Francisco. That was scary what they did. Was that Chinatown where that Waymo?
Yeah, that was Chinatown during Lunar New Year celebrations. Streets were packed. First they tagged it and vandalized it, then they lit it on fire with a firework.
Not cool. And David Cay Johnson in the second hour. Trump's legal cases here, there, and everywhere. There are legal cases against Trump and with Trump connected, both criminally and civilly. We'll get to all of that. The immunity question that's being played out at the Supreme Court, and also the disqualification in Georgia, potentially, of Fani Willis. What might happen there? There's so much going on legally with Donald Trump. David Cay Johnston will come by right after the top of the hour, so he'll be in the second hour. And don't we have an author today?
We do have an author who's written a book detailing the band Journey, which is a big deal in San Francisco. Don't Stop Believin'. You know, we're down with that.
Yeah.
To San Francisco Giants. But yeah, he's written this book, and it's really got kind of the juice about the inner workings of the band. So it'll be really interesting to hear what Mr. Golland has to say about Journey.
David Hamilton Golland. Livin Just to Find Emotion. Journey and the Story of American Rock. Yeah, this band, it could have been, when you think about this band, it could have been any other band at the time coming up. And it was coming up at a time when, for example, REO Speedwagon was kind of a contemporary of Journey, right? How come REO Speedwagon doesn't sell out arenas still, right? I mean, you can find REO Speedwagon on a bill with, you know, whatever Foreigner looks like now, you know, that now that their lead singer, Lou Graham, was it Lou Graham who left? Anyway, but my point is simply Journey exploded and stayed hot. Certainly one of the great classic rock bands. Why? What went into Journey? My God, they lost their lead singer, Steve Perry, and still they stayed hot. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. David Hamilton Golland will join in the second hour. Smash the like button if you would for the show. It helps us. Smash it like a boss.
Smashed it. with your iron rod.
Do it with your iron rod. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The House of Representatives nearing an impeachment vote for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. It is the second Republican attempt to impeach Mayorkas over his handling of the southern border after a similar vote failed last week by one vote. GOP leaders accuse him of willfully refusing to enforce immigration laws. So we'll see if they can
That's pretty
manage
rich from a party that got almost everything they wanted from the new immigration deal, but still wouldn't vote it in. I mean, it's
sorry,
unbelievable.
it's just not good enough. No.
Or is likely in the House to derail it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see if they have the votes to get there this time. It seems like you wouldn't bring it unless you knew for sure, but hey, whatever. Trump, let's go there because it's a big day for him as well. The Supreme Court is giving special counsel Jack Smith 1 week to respond to former President Trump's request to keep his federal election trial on hold. The High Court ordering Smith to respond by February 20th. This after Trump's legal team yesterday filed an emergency motion urging the justices to block a lower court ruling that said that Trump does not have presidential immunity from the indictment. Many think this is a delay tactic. Delay, delay, delay. Two candidates have been running neck and neck heading into today's special election to replace your friend, Mark, ousted New York Congressman George Santos.
I love my George Santos. I hope.
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here.
Yeah.
In December, Santos became only the sixth member of Congress to be expelled from office.
Oh, my God.
A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
Well, I am.
What's a little lie between friends?
Yeah.
Tom Suzy, a Democrat, wants his old congressional seat back. Republican Mazi Pilip, a newcomer and Israeli army veteran, wants the job too. So today's special election to fill that one. American adults have lost a record amount of money to fraud. And while it's appropriate to keep this picture of Mr. Santos up for the story, I won't do it. The Federal Trade Commission says that adults lost nearly $10 billion to fraudsters last year in the U.S. Americans deceived by a variety of scams, including those involving romance and investments. It's always the thing of the heart, right? They get you right in the heart and the pocketbook.
Girl, you just
Scams mimicking government services and officials increased last year, along with scams where attackers pretend to be legitimate organizations like major retailers. Those got a lot of people. Suspected scams can be reported to the Federal Trade Commission. So,
wow.
Yeah, don't be embarrassed. If you got scammed, report it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot
That's
of
the only
people
way
don't.
to shut them down, right?
A lot of people feel like it's too humiliating. They don't want to admit that they got taken. And so they don't ever come forward. And so, there's no way to recoup your losses. And while that's a long shot, it's still important to let other people know that this is going on out here.
My mom got scammed, I told you, twice. Yeah. And she didn't want to admit that she'd been scammed. She's a brilliant woman. She's a Fulbright scholar.
It's embarrassing.
It just happens, because they do masquerade in certain ways, particularly if there's technology involved, because many of us are challenged.
Yeah.
And so she was, it's quite awful what they do.
It happened to my mom too. The Apple guy called. Alleged Apple guy, and managed to talk her right into her computer, and she's humiliated about it. It's almost worse than losing however much, a couple $100 in her case, but it's humiliating for people that get taken advantage of in this way. Let's talk about the snowpack. California's Sierra Nevada mountain range replenished with snow. Two recent atmospheric river storms dumped several feet of snow in some places, according to the California Department of Water Resources. A check of the snowpack on February 11th showed the northern Sierra was at 81% of its historic level. The central and southern Sierra snowpack at 72 and 71% of normal, respectively. The Sierra snowpack is the major source of water for most of California, so really important how much snow we get. And it looks like we're doing well, not as well as last year. but it's not bad, right? Yeah. Let's talk about the bubonic plague. Yesterday, we talked about Alaska pox being passed to one person, one patient. Now we've got the bubonic plague in Oregon. An Oregon person diagnosed with bubonic plague likely was infected by their pet cat. It is the state's first confirmed case since 2015, according to health officials in Oregon. The CDC says antibiotics are the first line of treatment for this illness. The residents' close contacts and their pet were all provided medication. Looks like everyone's getting treatment and is going to be okay.
When in doubt, you blame the cat. That is not cool. As a cat person and animal person, I am completely
it is what it is, you know. It's the rats or the mice that are infected. The cats bite them and then they get infected and then boom.
So it can be prevented. Well, it can be treated with these antibiotics, I guess. So
yeah.
But wow. That's it. So you really it's disease of the day with Kim. Yesterday it was that Alaskan
Alaska
whatever
pox.
it was.
Today it's the bubonic plague.
Yeah.
We'll spin the roulette wheel of disease and see what will pop up tomorrow. I'm sure we'll find something good for you.
Yeah. He'll address it. He'll help.
Hey, you know who's back? Not the bubonic plague. Jon Stewart. That's right. Jon Stewart is back in the anchor chair on The Daily Show, Mondays only. Stewart ended his first run as host back in 2015 after doing it for 16 years. Last night, he joked about the presidential candidates' ages, the Super Bowl, the Taylor Swift conspiracy theories that went with it, along with other topics. In recent TV interviews, Stewart says he wanted to return to the program so he could have a platform during the election. And that he did. And here we go. Back with Jon Stewart. Some
I didn't
would
see
say,
any of it. Did you watch any of it?
Nikki showed parts of it on her show, which she said she's going to have to go back out and cut away afterward.
Yeah.
Because, demonetization and all.
Demonetization, yeah.
But it was good to see him again. And he did talk about the ages of both presidential candidates that are in the lead, President Biden and former President Trump. And I like the way he did it equally. He's one of these guys who he calls out hypocrisy wherever he sees it, whatever party is responsible. And so it was more of the same from him and very fun to watch.
Well, all right. I'll have to check it out.
It was great. I loved it.
Oh, okay.
That's great. I loved it. I did. Who else is coming back? Meghan Markle staying in the podcast business. The Duchess of Sussex has struck a partnership with Lemonada Media to distribute her Archetypes podcast on all audio platforms.
How many deals can this person make? She made one huge deal with Spotify.
I'll have a deal with you, and I'll have a deal with you.
Really? I mean, she makes these deals, and then she does like 4 episodes or whatever, and then that's it.
Well, she's also going to launch a new podcast. No details on the Untitled series yet. Markle says she's glad to continue her love of podcasting and supporting a female-founded company. This comes after Markle and Prince Harry's multi-million-dollar deal with Spotify ended last year.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. Remember, it ended with, they sold this big idea they were going to do this podcast. They do like 4 episodes. It might literally have been 4 episodes, and then they, or they didn't end one a month or something like that. And then
for gazillions of dollars, gazillions.
Right. And who's going to ask them for the money back? Apparently not Spotify. So now they make another deal. No,
which is ridiculous because you think if you did such a publicly rotten job in the same type of area that nobody would touch you with a 10-foot pole, but apparently. It's time to give money to people. And it wasn't even a rotten
job. It was like no job. They just didn't. They didn't do it.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, I mean, it was just. Anyway.
There is
failure
nothing
to perform
in our history that quite compares to this.
Well, I'm sure there is something in our history that compares to it. Go ahead, Kim.
Hey, it's almost time for spring break. At a hot spot in South Florida, they're preparing for partiers and expecting people to come and flood beaches next month. Miami Beach leaders.
This place is fun.
Woo! Yeah. Miami Beach leaders are detailing the new measures going into place this year to fight unruly crowds and violent crime. So wait a minute.
Pull up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Yeah.
This might not be so fun after all. There will be security checkpoints and bag searches at 3 designated beach accesses.
Wow. What? Oh, my God. That could cut down a little bit of the drinking.
Coolers, tents, tables, as well as alcohol, prohibited. What kind of spring break is that?
Wow.
Like, let me say it again.
Regular stock.
Yeah, I wonder if
Coolers?
Clarence Thomas will take the van down there, take the Clarence Thomas tour bus down to spring break, park in some Walmart parking lot.
No coolers, no tents, no booze. Sorry. Police will also implement a traffic plan Friday through Sunday nights. Additional rules taking effect on 2 high-impact weekends in March. More than 480 people were arrested and more than 100 guns confiscated in Miami Beach during last spring break. Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's all fun and games until the guns come out, and then I don't know.
Exactly.
That's pure speculation.
Yeah,
what kind of spring break is this?
Right. It ain't your mom's spring break.
No, thank you. Yeah, so it's going to be a different kind of looking spring break in Miami Beach this year. You mentioned Valentine's Day. And happy Valentine's Day to everybody. You know, a lot of people go to the movies, have a big kind of date night for Valentine's Day. And one of the biggest movies this year is this Bob Marley picture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
It's the musical biopic Bob Marley, One Love. And on Valentine's week, it is expected to make between $30 and $35 million Wednesday through President's Day on Monday.
Wow.
What?
Man, that's unreal.
I love it.
Man.
Sony's new Spider-Verse film, Madame Web, is projected to make between 22 and 25 million over the same 6-day span. Bob Marley going to beat Spider-Man. The domestic box office is down by 15% compared to this time last year. So maybe some Valentine's hot dates will bring it back to where it needs to be.
That's an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, Valentine's Day isn't as bad as you think it will be. I'm just trying to tell you. I don't get to see Tony tomorrow, so I told Tony Happy Valentine's Day before the show, and Mark said, "Screw Valentine's Day," like the Grinch that he is.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. Yeah.
Good day, sir.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, you know what I want for Valentine's
Day? I put it in the same category as Happy Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
Let's get the show going.
You know what I want for Valentine's Day? More Moroccan mint tea from Coachella Valley Coffee. That'd be a nice gift.
We got tea in from Coachella Valley Coffee, and Courtney can't stop talking about it. I tried some of it. There's a
what is it? What blend?
It's something with date. There's like a date sugar or date something with dates like built into the blend. It's so delicious. Oh my God.
I don't have this one. Oh,
so you
goodness.
don't add sugar, which makes it more healthy also.
Yeah, I never add sugar anyway.
I really recommend their teas are just terrific. I mean,
really
I'm now
good.
becoming this, sampler of the teas and really, really
The
great.
vanilla tea is really good. I had the mango yesterday, which is amazing. And that Moroccan mint or the ginger mint. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
they're all the
really
teas.
Good.
Wow. Ginger mint. Maybe that's the one she really liked.
Ginger mint. He told me that's their most popular.
Oh, here it is. Mint with date crystals. See it in the lower left?
Oh.
Mint with date crystals.
Okay, I have to try it.
Yeah.
That sounds really, really good.
So good. Oh, my God. I'm telling you, knock around that website. Get tea, get coffee, whatever. They are so... It's almost boutique-y, you know what I mean? They're very careful about what they actually put out there, what they put in bags when it comes to their beans, when it comes to their tea. Check it out. And then whatever you get, make sure you use our discount code because the stuff costs money, and I want to get you 10% off. Mark T at checkout. And then you can say Happy Valentine's Day.
Really looks good. Moroccan mint is a blend of gunpowder green tea and spearmint leaves. To this, we add date sugar crystals. The combination brews a pleasant, refreshing cup, sweetened naturally. It makes a very refreshing iced tea. Oh, thank you. Yes, sold.
Yeah,
$11.55 for a bag of tea that will last you. I'm actually saving money because I used to go get a tea. That was kind of like my treat to myself. After I do the show, I stop, I get a tea on the way to pick up the kids from school. But now I don't. I just make it at home. So I'm saving money. The bag of tea, which you saw there costs $11.50, ends up lasting me a month or two. It's good. Good.
Really, really good. So
and not only that,
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is where you get it.
And you get your discount.
CoachellaValley, Coachella Valley Coffee. And
do not forget to get your 10% off. It's the Mark Thompson Show Special. You put in Mark T at checkout, and the 10% comes right off your total. So enjoy CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hey, Mark. It's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
Feels great. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
What up, everybody? Glad you could be with us. It is Tuesday. Yeah, it is Valentine's Day Eve. It is true. I just didn't approve of the Valentine's Day greeting being so lavished upon Tony before the day actually arrived. But now that Kim explains it, I feel kind of bad. Got an email that I'll get to from Trevor Starr in Hollywood, who found a new drop for us. You know, he's always looking for drops. So I'll share that with you if there's time a little bit later. And, of course, Jefferson Graham is standing by, and we'll get to David Cay Johnson right after the top of the hour with much about Trump and the law. Now, without any further delay,
The Mark Thompson Show.
On Tuesdays, this guy comes through. He is a longtime tech writer for USA Today, left USA Today, and now he does his own show on YouTube. It is terrific, Photo Walks TV, and he does a Substack as well with a lot of great tips on photography, on technology. Here he is, Jefferson Graham, everyone.
Hey, before we go on, Mark, I watched Jon Stewart last night. I saw the whole thing.
Oh, what'd you think?
It was great. It was great to see him again. I was worried. I didn't think it would be as good because when he went to Apple, he stopped being funny. Okay, he got very serious. But this was the Jon Stewart that we knew and loved, who came up with some great clips. His eyebrows, his humor was a little long at 25 minutes, but it was great to see him.
That's the new age that it's a little long at 25 minutes.
Yeah, but speaking of tech, I watched it at 9 p.m. on YouTube. So I cut the cord 3 years ago, as you know, but it was right there on YouTube. Not highlights, but the entire clip. Who needs cable?
Right.
Who needs it?
I mean, hey, Tony, did you take his level down? Why does he seem a little low to me?
I'll fix it.
Anyway, Jeff, where did you watch the Super Bowl, Mr. I Cut the Cord? Did you watch the Super Bowl or not?
Didn't watch it.
No?
Didn't see it. I'm un-American. I went to the movies, and this is a great tip. This is a really good tip, okay? So I'm not into sports. So shoot me, but I'm not into sports, and I don't watch the Super Bowl. So
you cannot say you love your country.
Yeah, all right.
So we went to the movies with my mother. Took my mother to see Mean Girls 4 weeks after it opened. Right. Okay. My niece, Jana, has a walk-on in the movie. She has a line in the movie. So we went to go see her together. We were the only people in the theater. We were the only people in the theater. It was a private screening room. And I went up to the people at the theater afterwards. I said, "What's up with this?" And they said, "Oh, it's like this every Super Bowl Sunday." Because we went at 3:30. We went at 3:30. So he says, it's a ghost town. Nobody's here. So for those of you who like to have private screenings, next February,
Super Bowl
Sunday.
That is a pro tip. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So before I get to this consumer teleprompter, which you have road tested essentially, I want to ask you about these robot cars getting trashed in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Maybe, Tony,
Terrible.
you can call up some pics along the way here. I mean, it's pretty brutal. They surround this car, as Kim was saying before. They graffiti it, then they set fire to it, and the streets were clotted already. Was it the Chinese New Year? Was that the reason they were? This is in
Chinese
Chinatown.
New Year, I thought, was on the 22nd.
What was the reason that the streets were crowded, Kim? Do you know? Kim's not here. Okay.
I think they just started celebrating.
Yeah, I'm here. It's the Lunar New Year.
It was
a Lunar New Year celebration in the city.
Yeah. Okay.
So they started celebrating, and there it is, one of the busiest streets in San Francisco, right off Broadway, Grant Street, heart of Chinatown. Not a cop to be found. Not a cop to be found.
I mean, you need a real police presence in these places that have tremendous numbers of people in, quote, celebration.
If we'd like to name the top tourist spots in San Francisco on this hand. Okay. Chinatown's in there, right?
Right. Certainly on the
Right.
Lunar New Year, especially.
Golden Gate Bridge, Embarcadero, Fisherman's Wharf, North Beach, Chinatown. And you can go on from there and then Union Square. How could there be no cops there? So anyway, so the mob goes nuts. They don't want robot cars in their city. It's this Frankenstein movie. If you want to go back to the 1930s, at the end of the whole mob scene, we're gonna kill the monster. Good luck finding that, Tony. So they don't want the robot cars. And one robot car company already got tossed, and this is the other one that's owned by Google. Do you remember 2 years ago when there were scooters on every street in LA?
Sure.
And San Francisco, and people hated it. They hated it. They hated having to share their sidewalk with these scooters. So what did people do? They set fire to the scooters. They threw them in the water. They did all sorts of terrible things to them. And now there's not as many scooters. There's barely any scooters. And
so do you see this as? Let me just dissect this a little bit. Then, do you see this as an act of civil disobedience, or do you see it as just vandalism?
Civil disobedience. We'll show them. We don't want them in our town. Yeah.
You think those scenes I just saw are reflective of a crowd that, for the most part, is doing the arithmetic on these driverless cars, and that Uber and Lyft drivers are going to be out of work, and cab drivers will be out of work, and they just don't want them, and they're dangerous, whatever it might be.
I think it's more dangerous. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't. It looked like straight out vandalism, man. Looked like straight out.
Do you think it was like January 6th and let's just go attack because we feel like attacking, or do you think there was a little hate in there? We don't like these cars. I mean, what caused that guy to take his scooter and throw it into the windshield, which is what he did?
I think the January 6th parallel is tortured, to be perfectly honest, with respect. But I think that it is largely vandalism, and I think these are opportunists out for a party. A lot of them are drunk, and they're just trashing stuff. Yeah, so there might have been some who are agenda-driven, kind of like the J6ers, but I think in general it was a group of people. Again, all I've got is the pictures who, it's a party to trash stuff and set stuff on fire. So anyway, but more to the
Firecrackers.
Firecrackers. More to the point.
Did you know that if you throw a firecracker in a car, it'll set it on fire? I never knew that.
No, I mean, is that what happened? It was a firecracker that set the car on fire?
A bunch of them.
Yeah, they broke the window and threw the firecracker inside of the vehicle. That's why. And then it lit up the seat. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. That's straight out vandalism. That, again, I don't mean to sound like, the old angry guy on the porch, but that's just, I think that's just thugs, kind of, we call them thugs, hoods, you know what I mean? They were, just people out for a good time. They're drunk. They're just, there's a quality of, those who are, look at it. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I mean, the guy with the skateboard, are you kidding? You think he really cares about, I don't know, brother, maybe you're right, but it seems to me like they're just...
No, I think they hate the cars, and that's why they did it. And the car just sort of miraculously stopped because the computer got confused, and they've been doing this to a lot of cars in San Francisco. And again, I don't know if your viewers remember, but I'm a victim of theft in San Francisco. I was doing a shoot there, and some kid just came up and ran off with my gear in his getaway car. And when I tried talking to the cop an hour later when he finally arrived, he couldn't care less, could never reach him again. And the police presence is just not there. And, these are big tourist spots. San Francisco has a black eye in many parts of the country, and it's still one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Why can't they beef up the police presence? What are they spending their money on?
Well, on that, you and I are completely in agreement. One thing I will just say, and then I will move on. If it is, as you say, and they really are angry about those Waymo cars and the driverless cars in San Francisco for reasons that I've kind of mentioned, taking jobs away from Uber and Lyft drivers, taking jobs away from cab drivers, et cetera, the danger associated with them, if that's really underlying what we saw, then it's even more damnable, because what you're doing is you're putting people in mortal danger as a result of your civil disobedience, which I think it was not. But again, to just follow your strand, it's the wrong way to send your message if you want to think of it that way.
To set a car on fire on Grant Avenue in the middle of the street. I mean, it's a miracle. It's a miracle that none of the stores were affected.
Agreed.
How did that happen?
Agreed.
You know? Yeah.
All right. Now I want to ask you about this new consumer thing called Teleprompter.
The prompter.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is it's a consumer teleprompter. Tell everybody how it works, please.
Okay, so I am talking to Mark right now and all of you guys on my new little teleprompter that I love. And you say, okay, fine, I don't do online video. I don't care. But, do you do a Zoom call? Do you talk on Teams? Do you do Slack video? Do you have a problem when you want to see what's going on the screen and you're always going down here and then you're looking because you want to make eye contact with people and you want to see what's happening? So they came up with this way. It's a $279 product. It fits on top of your camera. It can fit on your iPhone, on your iPad, whatever, and it acts as a second monitor. So now I can look Mark in the eye. Hey, I can see him. But
to your point, you can see not only look me in the eye because you can do that with a camera. You're saying you can read a script at the same time or read notes at the same time.
Well, you could do the usual things. I can read a script. If you want to do a course, a lot of people like to do courses. You can read your course, and it's hard. I mean, I've done a bunch of 1-hour courses. You try memorizing an hour. I'm not an actor, so I couldn't do it. And I don't know how many, obviously there's a lot of one person plays, they could do it. I'm not built for that, but I can read my script and I can read it pretty well. And because it's right across from me, right over there, I can actually run it on a web program, which is called SpeakFlow, and just operate it this way with my hand instead of, it's sometimes the problem with reading scripts is they go too fast, they go too slow. Mark can tell you more about this because I think he has more experience with reading scripts off a teleprompter than I do, but it's really helpful.
That's great. David Cay Johnson, who's going to join us next, is asking, what is the name of the product again and where do you get it?
It's called the Elgato Prompter. $279 Elgato, ELGATO. Go to the Elgato website. And it's so popular, there's usually like 3 to 4 week lag time to get it. But a lot of people have been buying it.
And it's $279, is that what you said?
$279, and it's compact. And I have used all sorts of teleprompters, and they're really big and they're really bulky. And the biggest problem is the speed of the words. And my script will be running over there, and then I've got to run back over here and fix it. And then you'll be talking, and then you start talking like this, and you just like go really, really fast and start speeding up. Well, this one I don't have the problem with.
You're saying, because you control it yourself, the speed?
I control it. Well, this program I've been using, SpeakFlow, is voice activated. So it works voice activation, but if you don't feel like doing voice activated and you just want to run it at your own speed, I could be like right now, you don't see my fingers, you don't see my hand, but I could be running it while I'm talking and
sure,
just,
no, I understand,
going
but you're
up
saying
and
that there's AI essentially, or whatever. There's a program that hears your words and then follows it and automatically moves it at whatever speed. That's really
because
cool.
It's connected to the computer. So it's hearing from the webcam, microphone.
Yeah. All right. This is cool. Tony's seeing it. If you're just listening on one of the podcast platforms on which this show can be heard, check out the pictures of the prompter, Elgato, on our YouTube show. But you can also just go to Elgato, I guess, and find it. Just Google the Elgato.
Google it.
Yeah, exactly, and find it.
You could also go to my newsletter, jeffersongraham.substack.com. My latest piece is about the teleprompter. There was some growing pains. There was some connection issues, and I talk about them and how to fix them in the latest newsletter.
Love that we got into the Waymo issue and the controversy around those driverless cars in San Francisco as well. JeffersonGraham.substack.com. Also, PhotoWalks TV is his YouTube series, and he's here on Tuesdays. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, Jefferson Graham, everybody. Yeah, right. Love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
That's a super usable item. It's a little pricey, but if you do a lot of that work, it's worth the money, I would think.
Oh, I might have to get that. That's actually added to my list right now, honestly. Thank you, Jefferson.
Tony gets everything.
Thanks, Tony. I mean, I guess it's good if you're reading off a script, but most of the time we're not. We're just talking.
No, for this show, it probably wouldn't be the right thing. But if you are used to looking at notes or something, sometimes you're, doing an hour and you're a panelist or whatever, and there's certain things you want to recall.
Yeah,
maybe it can be useful.
If you're teaching a class, I would say, yeah.
No, that's a great point. If
Also,
you're a lecturer
what it could be used for is this display you're looking in right now, like to look at Kim, you make that the thing.
Great.
So you're looking at people straight in the eye.
I have to look over here to see the chat, to see
make that your main display.
Great point. Wow, Tony with
Thanks, Tony. So then you get eye contact that way.
Very good, Tony. That actually, okay, I will get one.
What?
All right.
That's all it took?
Yeah, I just needed a practical application, so thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy joins us on Tuesdays. Such a luxury to have a great mind like his in our mix regularly. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, multiple best-selling author, has forgotten more about Donald Trump than most will ever know. He's David Cay Johnson, everybody.
Hello, Mark.
Look at that, Dean of Trumpologists.
Somebody called me that on TV one day, and I have to tell you, I'm intrigued with your previous guest because the teleprompters that the TV uses, and people don't know this, all hosts, all presidents, read from teleprompters. Those are like super sophisticated, many, many thousands of dollar machines. And the ones that I've seen for folks like me are, not very good. So I'm glad to hear they have a good one.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just to round out your point, when I started, it was in San Francisco, actually. I remember, it was paper scripts and it's laid out and there's a camera that's over the script. So it's a closed circuit feed from the script to the prompter monitor, which sits there in front of the camera. And now you're dependent on that person who has the script to run it at the same pace that you're speaking. And whether they're distracted or not can have everything to do with, whether they're on point. So this sounds like it's a marriage of some technologies that solve all those problems.
When Obama was president, there was a whole meme going on at Fox and elsewhere that Obama couldn't speak unless he read from a prompter, trying to imply that he was stupid, which is ridiculous. And his teleprompter broke one day. And he spoke for 45 minutes eloquently without a teleprompter. Right. And that was sort of the end of that meme that he's so dumb he has to read off a teleprompter.
Yeah. What's amazing, just because you mentioned it and the presidencies, I'm amazed that these guys can, and I'll just speak Joe Biden, maybe Exhibit A, that he speaks so well reading prompter without glasses. Is that I don't know how that's possible.
Well, I assume he's got very good eyesight. And, some people, as they get older, their distance eyesight actually improves. I'm not one of those folks, but some.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, right.
But, of course, you can adjust in the teleprompter the size of the font.
Sure, of course.
And make it larger, so.
Many criminal and civil proceedings against former President Trump, and they all crowd together even on a legal calendar, such that they have to make way for each other. Can you take us through some of the legal machinations and how they might play out? And
Well, Donald has just asked the Supreme Court to overturn the decision by a 3-judge federal appeals panel in Washington that he does not have immunity from prosecution for crimes committed while in office. And the opinion in that is brilliantly written. I'm far from the only person who thinks that. A number of eminent lawyers have praised how well crafted this opinion by the 3 judges is. I don't see any reason for the Supreme Court to take up the case because they can just deny it and that will have it stand. And hopefully they won't take up the case, but who knows? But even if they do, he will not get what he wants. This ridiculous claim that he's immune unless he is impeached and convicted, and then he can be prosecuted, which is not what the Constitution says. What the Constitution says is that even if you're impeached and convicted, you can still be prosecuted. So that's that case. The case.
But let me ask you, David, just on that case, he's asking for there to be a pause in this, right? He's not even asking for a legal judgment right now. This is all it seems.
He's just trying to run out the clock so he can
Right.
have his trial after the election, in the belief that if he wins and is going back to the White House, of course, then he can just shut everything down on the federal level. And on the state level, he would then argue, probably successfully, you can't put me on trial in the state court while I'm president. You're going to have to wait till I'm out of office. And the problem with that is, having announced he intends to be a dictator on day one, of course, he says he'll give it up the next day. He's expecting that that's the end of any concerns about that. And I'll tell you what I told my class yesterday at Syracuse University College of Law. If any of you can find an example of someone who gave up being a dictator after a day, I'll give $1,000 to your charity of your choice. And I said, that is a no-risk bet. It doesn't exist in the world. So the New York case, the paying off of Stormy Daniels case, there are 34 felonies because the number of checks that were written and the documents that were mailed. That's the one at the moment that looks most likely to go to trial. It's the least important of the cases. And it does not address the issue that I've recommended Alvin Bragg prosecute Trump for, which is he created, during the 5 years before and while he was in the White House, 60 or 65, I don't remember the exact number, fictitious businesses that had no revenue and took tax losses for them without, I'm sure, any receipts or invoices. And the problem with that is, back in 2016, I broke the story that Donald has been tried twice for tax fraud. It was civil income tax fraud, but he was tried twice back in the 90s. And it was the exact same issue. He just fabricated a business. His own lawyer testified against him. He forged his tax return. That is, he put his tax lawyer's signature on his tax return with a photocopy machine. And so he was on notice that you can't do this, and it would be a slam dunk, in my view, to prosecute him for that. And that evidence of past behavior would absolutely be introducible in the New York State Court. In the case,
so to be clear, that's that would be a criminal case, David. Or
yes. No, this would be a criminal case, and the case that's coming up, the Stormy Daniels case, that is a criminal case. And it's the same case, but brought by the county of New York County, rather than the federal government, that sent Michael Cohen to prison. So the facts are well established. In the Georgia case, Trump has been promoting this argument that, well, Fani Willis is having an affair with the guy she hired as special prosecutor. There's going to be a hearing day after tomorrow. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day, if you've forgotten to get flowers, folks. And I don't think anything will come of that. I'm reminded of when J. Edgar Hoover went to the White House and told Lyndon Johnson that he had this tape of Martin Luther King having sex with some woman who was in his congregation. And according to the tape that's at the LBJ Library in Texas, Lyndon goes, "Yeah, Edgar, who ever heard of a pastor sleeping with one of the women in the choir?"
I've never heard that before. That's great.
Anyhow, that case continues.
So Fani and Nathan Wade, he's the prosecutor, and I'm sure that there'll be flowers exchanged on Valentine's Day between those two. But the realities are that Trump and his people are saying, hey, this case should be just
completely
erased.
Thrown out.
Yeah.
Completely thrown out. And the problem is he's being paid half what he was paid by a Republican DA in another county on an hourly basis. So you can't exactly argue he's being overpaid.
In other words, you can't say that she gave him the job because she wanted to get him money. Is that your point?
Yes, exactly. And furthermore, he's performing. He's obviously doing very well. And I called up the Georgia rules of professional conduct. We used to have ethics for lawyers. Now we have professional conduct rules. And I don't think that that's without reason, even though lawyers and my colleagues at the university and the law school don't like it when I say that. But I went through the rules, and I can't see where there's any violation of the rules here, because he's performing, because he's providing the services he's supposed to, et cetera. they could be married, as best I can read the rules, and there's no conflict. And, back in 1973 or 74, when I was at the Detroit Free Press, I learned that there was a county on the Lake Michigan shore of Michigan where the part-time county prosecutor and the part-time public defender were law partners. They were the only two lawyers in the law firm. And they would square off against each other. And I went, boy, that's going to be something. I get in the car, I drive from Lansing all the way over to the coast, interview them, interview everybody else. And I go back and talk to the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. And he goes, I don't see any rule being violated here. Everyone knows this. It's been disclosed. And a party might object, but no one ever has. If they did, case could be transferred to the DA in the next county over. We ran a story about it, but if you can do that, then the Fani Willis Wade business is nonsense.
So why then is it getting so much media oxygen, David Cay Johnston? I mean, this
Sex.
is really,
Sex.
Yeah.
When I was a 19-year-old staff writer at the San Jose Mercury, and self-taught, was doing okay, but very young. My editor called me on the phone one night. He started reading the lead of my story and reading it like, oh God, this is drudge. This is sludge. Ugh. And all of a sudden he says, oh, one column over, sex. Click.
Yeah.
I got the message.
You're right. It's juicy. It's juicy.
Yeah, the same editor who took out my description of a young woman who'd been murdered by her lover and said to me, all 18-year-old murder victims are beautiful virgins. That was sort of the standard back in the day.
Wow. And now this juicy story, do you think it'll end up with Willis somehow recusing herself, or
I don't see that at all, but we don't know what the presiding judge, who's been very solid, knows what he's doing. He's no Lance Ito. He controls his courtroom. I don't know what he would do. Trump, of course, whatever happens, if it's not what he wants, he will appeal, but that's not going to slow down that case.
This is a huge. This case to me is extremely important, David. I mean, it strikes me as getting at the heart of the democracy that was being undermined, to undermine the election. I mean, I put it right up there at the top. I mean, sadly, the ones that you say are going to come first before the court and we're actually going to hear, like the payoff to Stormy Daniels, et cetera, they just don't weigh in as heavy.
The federal case in Washington and the state case also both show that January 6th was just the most visible part of an iceberg of an effort that went on all over the country, that lots of people participated in. And this was a vast conspiracy to overturn the will of the American people. So I think they are very important cases. There already have been 4 guilty pleas among the 19 defendants in the Georgia racketeering and conspiracy case. That includes Sidney Powell and can't remember at the moment the name of the second lawyer. But
Eastman?
No, it's not John Eastman. I debated him once, and he's not very smart, not very good. The 2 guilty pleas, there's 4 guilty pleas, but those 2 are lawyers who were instrumental in the conspiracy to overturn the election. So I think that's a very important case to go to trial. And of course, if Trump gets back to the White House, he can't pardon himself out of that. So that case really needs to get tried before November. And then we have the case that, if it went to trial, is the easiest case to win, and in some ways the most important to people. And that's the Florida case of taking the national security documents. And last week, the special prosecutor, a Republican, Robert Hur, issued his report. I read it. The reporting on it is atrocious. It's as if people read, the press release and the first few pages, and that's it. First of all, it absolutely inappropriately goes into this assertion that Biden has a poor memory. Biden's defense and his lawyer's defense is that when he was asked, when did your son Beau die, the older of his 2 boys, who served in several tours in the Middle East wars and got cancer from the burning pits they used to get rid of garbage, developed cancer and died. Biden didn't answer the question. And Biden says he didn't answer the question because he thought it was contemptuous and inappropriate and he was angry. Not a smart strategy, especially for a guy who is a lawyer, even though he's never practiced law. He should have answered the question. But there's a very good piece in the New York Times yesterday by a cognitive scientist from UC Davis explaining how the general public's understanding of what's going on with Biden and Trump is wrong. It isn't what the science shows. So you notice in this interview, I couldn't remember the name of one of the lawyers, the one of the two who pled guilty. I've written his name, I don't know how many times. It's just not coming up. When you're 75 years old, that happens. It doesn't indicate you can't think clearly. And Biden has demonstrated repeatedly that he's perfectly able to think clearly, we don't see it in public, but negotiate with people. He had the same margin in the House his first 2 years in office that the Republicans had until a few days ago. It's gotten smaller since. And he got major legislation passed. They can't hardly get anything passed. But the Florida case, Jack Smith's office, the special prosecutor, made a strategic decision to file it in Florida rather than in Washington, D.C. The Constitution says you must be tried in the district where the crime occurred. If they had filed the case in Washington, D.C., Trump would have complained that, no, the documents are in Washington. If we had lied and denied about it, which we deny we did, that occurred in Florida. And so they decided they would file it in Florida. And unfortunately, they got this judge whose first on the record filing in the case showed her bias by saying that Trump deserves special treatment, which the Supreme Court absolutely, and the Constitution say that's no, you don't get special treatment. Nobody gets special treatment. And she is doing everything she can to tie up that case. Her latest horrendous action is to require the disclosure of 24 people who were interviewed for the investigation, most of whom are unlikely to be called at trial. And I have to go back and reread this to make sure I understand it correctly, but it appears she also is ordering the removal of some redacted material. Redactions when they block out stuff so you can't see it, which the prosecution says are serious matters of national security. And of course, a judge who wants to help Donald Trump, that's the best tool she's got. Well, you want to try Mr. Trump? Sure. You're going to put all these national security secrets right into the public record. You're going to let the world know. And that's something for which I think she can be removed. And I hope Jack Smith's office has or soon has enough to remove her, because she has no business, in my view, presiding over this case.
Well, Jack Smith, who has been so, David, his track record is so good in handling, the tough hombres like Trump. But boy, I thought this was at the time, I said, just couldn't believe it, because as you say, it's such a big case and easy to understand. Like, it's so indefensible that you take those documents. You can say whatever you want, say that you declassify them, say whatever. Still, sir, why did you take thousands and thousands and thousands of them to your home in Mar-a-Lago, wave them around at dinners, refer to them? It's so utterly without defense of any kind, an explanation of any kind, that it strikes me it would really be so politically damaging to him, in addition to legally damaging.
Well, and the two other things that I think are deeply disturbing are that he told his lawyers that he had disgorged all the documents when he hadn't, and he knew that. So that's one form of lying and denying. And then he did a whole bunch of things. In one case, he had one of his minions, I think it was a lawyer, go do work in a different part of Mar-a-Lago, which is a huge building. And then he had a locksmith upstairs changing the lock on a door in his bedroom. And he has a secret compartment behind a television set in his bedroom. And that's where a bunch of the documents were. So he was even lying to his lawyers, not just to say, I've given up all the documents, I've disgorged them, but hiding things from them. And we have at least one employee who was told to destroy evidence, tamper with evidence at a minimum. And those are really serious matters that are not being treated by Judge Cannon with the kind of seriousness they should be. I've been to a lot of court proceedings where an allegation comes up that a witness has tampered with the evidence, and I've never seen a judge do anything except get very stern about that kind of behavior.
as we talk about all of these different cases then churning, I mean, it's like you need to be an air traffic controller to just land these cases right in the right courtrooms.
Yeah, Mark, I've spoken to my students and some other students recently, and I was absolutely dumbfounded at their complete lack of knowledge. One of my students yesterday, one of my better ones, I said, come on, what's going on in these cases? Well, he's in court. Well, what's he in court for? Well, he did some bad things. And this is a real problem if young, most people when they're in college aren't inveterate newspaper readers or news watchers. But, in this era, you don't have to pay that much attention to know what's going on. If you just listen to the hourly newscast for 5 minutes every day, you can be reasonably well informed.
Well, I also think that these are sexy.
The lack of knowledge.
I think that these are sexy cases. I mean, you've got the president on a recorded call asking for overturn of the election. Find me 11,700. You've got another one with all these pictures of the president's documents having been, as you say, sort of secreted away, and everything from bathrooms to the secret space. There's a lot of sexy here, I think, in this. You had a coup attempt, you had a legal coup attempt, and you had a violent coup attempt. My God, there's a lot going on here. So, David, so grateful to spend some time with you. So, in the next week, will there be any, and this is also in the chat, there's a lot of this, like, what is the legal timeline that one can hope for? Because, like, people are saying, well, so we're going to be sitting around in November, and none of this will have, here it is. I just hope we're not sitting here listening to Mark's. So.
I see Randy Brunling's comment, who comments a lot, I've noticed. I think at least one of these cases will go to trial before the election.
Okay.
I think that will happen. I hope the Supreme Court denies certiorari, refuses to hear the case. But given the egos involved, who knows? That's in the insurrection case, trying to overthrow the government case. That case, if it does go to the Supreme Court, the thing to watch will be how Thomas and Alito, assuming that they want to help Trump, try to wriggle out of the fact that their own stated judicial philosophy is that Trump has nothing whatsoever under their stated philosophy. In the meantime, something else has happened, Mark, that I think is going to turn out to be very important. Donald Trump on Saturday, he has this bizarre notion that members of NATO pay dues, which they don't.
Thank you. I wanted to get to that. Yes.
Yeah, the NATO alliance, which is two countries on this hemisphere, us and Canada, and 29 countries in Europe, you're supposed to spend 2% of GDP on your military. 2% of your economy on your military. And a bunch of them spend 1.25%, 1.5%. And so Trump says at this rally Saturday, well, if you haven't paid your dues, and he claimed, which is made up story because it's Donald, that one of the leaders said to him in the past, well, if we haven't paid our dues, and Russia attacks us, you'll defend us. And he said, no, I'm not going to defend you. And the aggressor, unnamed, but obviously Putin, can do whatever the hell he wants. And this has very much concerned the Europeans. Putin, or his regime anyway, has just called for the arrest of the Prime Minister of Estonia, one of the three little Baltic republics. And the Estonians have been saying for, I think at least since 2017, that Putin wants to roll his tanks in and take over. There's a little tiny piece of Russia that is disconnected from Russia. You have to go through Belarus and one of the three republics to get to it, Kaliningrad. And they've been very concerned for a long time that Russian tanks are going to show up in order to secure their access by land. And Donald Trump essentially invited war. Right. He invited this. I told when my students last night were sort of, and I said, I don't think you've thought this through. Let me explain what's going to happen. If we get into a land war defending European countries from the Russians, all you young men, and perhaps depending on how the law goes, you young women, are going to get drafted. You're going to be trained. You're going to be sent over there, and not all of you are going to live. So
that's exactly
you really
right.
Need to pay attention to this.
Yeah, and it's interesting, David. the allies are reacting to this. I mean, there's increasing talk about, we are going to have to move forward without America, and we have to at least allow for that possibility. And they're speaking about this openly. Tony's got a picture of Estonia up there and its relation to Russia, geographic relation to Russia. But the other thing, David, I thought from a political standpoint was it was a stupid, he's playing to the room. He's playing to his MAGAites who love that tough talk, authoritarian crap. And he's, of course, with this completely concocted story, completely invented. Sir, would you not defend us if we didn't pay, et cetera? But my point politically is it gets away from something that was being talked about a lot in media, which was this whole question of Biden's mental acuity. Now everybody's talking about, instead of the mental acuity, about this NATO remark. You realize how the political season brings some pretty sudden changes.
Well, yes, and I think the Biden administration, which has not, as a campaign organization, been out doing what I think they ought to do to promote him, and as I mentioned to you on an earlier show, I assume that their strategy is we don't want to peak early. We're confident in what we're doing. We'll take our time. We get ready. We'll go after him. But I think the time to really start provoking Donald the way the Lincoln Project has, so that he says crazier and crazier things, comes forward. I was very shocked today. One of my doctors is a very hard libertarian, hates all Democrats inherently and is suspicious of Republicans. He's a huge Trumper. And today he said, I've had it with Trump. And I said, really, what changed? And he said, the statement about helping Putin start a war in Europe. He's crazy. And I said, yeah, I've been telling you that for years. And he goes, well, you're right. He's crazy. And now he doesn't care for Biden. He's trying to figure out what right-wing candidate can I vote for. And I say, you're just wasting your vote if that's what you're doing, but do what you want to do. But I think provoking Trump to do more crazy things like this, it would be a smart strategy for the Biden administration. And by the way, there are not going to be any presidential debates. Donald Trump is not going to debate Joe Biden.
Yeah, it sure doesn't feel as I don't see why you would. If you're Biden, and I also think that
if I'm Biden, I'd want to debate him. It's Trump, I think, who's not going to want to debate. He has a good terrific stage presence, but he could easily, with good strategy, be provoked into saying crazy things.
I don't see either one of them. I guess maybe I should have said I don't see either one of them wanting to debate.
Sure, that makes sense.
They can be both exposed in ways that I think would be less than flattering. But I'm glad you mentioned the NATO thing because it was huge. I mean, it's titanic, and it's titanic not just in terms of sort of political rhetoric, but in terms of its real effects on our relationship with allies. And this guy wants to be president of the United States again, and he's saying crazy stuff like this. The last thing I want to get to, and we're running over time, but Nikki Haley was the other crazy thing he was kind of
Where's Nikki Haley's husband?
Where's Nikki Haley's husband?
Yeah, that is a particularly remarkable thing that Donald has been going after. Where's Nikki Haley's husband? Because he's tried to imply, that she's a promiscuous woman, and that hasn't caught on. And now it's where's her husband? Her husband is voluntarily serving in the Middle East as a combat soldier. Excuse me. Of course she's not there. But remember, Donald has no sense of sacrifice. He didn't know why there is a memorial over the Arizona. He had to have it explained to him by General Kelly, his chief of staff. He thinks Finland is part of Russia. He doesn't understand. He confuses World War I and the War of 1812 and the World War II and the War of 1812. Remember when he famously said that in the War of 1812 that we took the airfields first.
Right.
I mean, Donald is just all bluster and lack of knowledge, and yet millions of people continue to think he's what they need, what the country needs. And I've been on radio where I don't talk directly to the other guest, but the other guest, is arguing that dictatorship would be a good thing. America needs that. It's horrible.
I mean, the other thing that I would this is interesting. Andrew often stirs the pot with stuff like this. David is scaring people with a world war. How are we better off being confrontational with Russia? It's not a question of confrontational. I think it's a question of a strong alliance keeping Russia from being expansionist.
Well, there's no reason to encourage Vladimir Putin's stated desire. And Vladimir Putin has said, there's plenty of public record on this, has said that the worst thing that happened in the 20th century in geopolitics was the collapse of the Soviet Union. He wants to put it back together, not as the Soviet Union, but as the Putin dictatorship. And I have relatives by marriage in what was Eastern Europe under the communists, and they are just absolutely terrified, and I do mean terrified, that the Russian tanks will come if Donald Trump is back in the White House.
Yeah. I mean, it is true. I mean, that Vladimir Putin wants to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and those pieces don't want that. So anyway, to be continued. But definitely politically, a huge misstep as well as a dangerous misstep. So, hey, David, thank you. DCReport.org and also at The Nation is a couple of places you can read David Cay Johnston.
Oh, no, the New Republic. See, now you did it. Getting the wrong word there. That's okay. Yeah, the New Republic. I have a piece up there from last week. Take care.
Yeah, there you go. All right, great to talk to you. David Cay Johnston. Good stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right. Good stuff from David always, from the legal to the political. Thanks, everyone. You can comment in after hours commenting, too, if you're watching or listening in replay. Most people do. We'll check out comments and try to respond to them as necessary. Kim and Tony,
Yeah.
I want to get to our guest. Are you okay with that?
Kim, how are you?
Yeah.
Yes, I did want to tell you the one thing. I didn't know if you saw. I tried to put the headline up there. You guys were talking about Trump's NATO comment, and that there has been a response from President Biden, who called the comments dumb, shameful, and dangerous.
Yeah.
He accused Trump of bowing to a Russian dictator, and he promised to defend every inch of NATO territory as long as he's president. So I wanted to throw that out there.
I did see that. Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's a somewhat predictable response, but an important one nonetheless. And so, thank you for pointing it out. All right, so without any further delay, let me...
The Mark Thompson Show.
There's a new book out. It's called Livin Just to Find Emotion. Journey and the Story of American Rock. So when you think about Journey, then everything else just falls into place in terms of the title. Just a small-town girl living in a lonely world. How about it for the author of this book, historian David Hamilton Golland? What's up, David?
Well, good afternoon, Mark, and good afternoon, San Francisco, the home of Journey.
Yeah, that's right. Journey did rise in the Bay Area. And we were talking before about the fact that, there are a lot of big Bay Area bands and even contemporaries of Journey that did well and are still doing okay. I mean, with the surviving members or whatever. I'm thinking of bands like REO Speedwagon is the one that came to mind last hour. But the enduring success, the super group success that Journey had really outpaced all of that. And then I remembered, and then I'll stop, and I want to hear what you have to say. But then I remembered that the lead singer of Journey, Steve Perry, left the band. They had to replace their lead singer. I mean, this is the signature voice of the band, and they still were filling arenas and so tell us, take us through this remarkable story that you've written on.
I mean, there's just so much to tell, Mark. But I think the major point of the fact that Steve Perry left, and that he left twice, and yet they're still filling arenas and stadiums, not just in the United States, all around the Pacific Rim, wherever they go, is just an incredible, remarkable story. But it hasn't always been that way. In fact, there was a time in the early 2000s when they were playing county fairs, and it wasn't quite the way it is now or the way it was during the heyday years with Steve.
Well, when they were playing county fairs, was that the beginning, or did they take a rise up and then dip down?
This was part of their dip down. When Steve Perry left the band for good officially in 1998, but it was after their reunion album, Trial by Fire, which came out in 1996. They initially replaced him with a fellow from Brooklyn, New York named Steve Augeri. And Steve Augeri not only sounds like Steve Perry in terms of his name, but he sort of had that look of Steve Perry, and he definitely had that voice. But the fans weren't having it. I mean, they could make a living out there on the road, and they did, and they kept going with about 3/5 of their classic era lineup. But it was hard going during those years.
Now, that's fascinating to me, because you're saying they got a guy who looked and sounded like Steve Perry, and then somehow they still couldn't get traction with their audience? What changed? What happened? And first of all, why do you suppose that would be?
Oh, there he is on your screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the initial shock of losing Steve Perry and the fan base, but also we have to remember at that time, that super hit "Don't Stop Believin'" was not the hit that it has since become again. It was a big hit in the early 1980s. It brought me into fandom with the band. It's the first song I ever heard played by Journey in the summer of 1982. I remember hearing it vividly that first time. But in the late 1990s, early 1980s, that song was the butt of jokes. I mean, I remember in 1998, when it was either 98 or 99, when Adam Sandler made fun of it in the movie The Wedding Singer by playing a violin version at his first wedding, the one where he gets stood up at the altar. And yet, that song has just had this remarkable return to prominence, from the movie Monster to the TV show Glee, to becoming an underdog anthem for all sorts of sports teams, to the final scene of The Sopranos, which is when it really came back into the mainstream big time.
Why did Steve Perry leave Journey?
So Steve Perry left Journey twice. The last time he was on a stage in a full Journey concert was February 1st, 1987. So that's 37 years ago already. And he left for his health and for his sanity. The band, during the years when it was on top of the world in the late 70s, early 80s, they would tour incessantly, night after night after night, 9 months out of the year. Then they'd go straight back into the studio, either where you are in the Bay Area or down in the Los Angeles area, for another 3 months to churn out the next album. And that's a really, really grueling pace. Now, it paid off. It made them incredibly successful, but that's a lot to maintain. And so when he walked away in 1987, he was doing it for himself, and he really needed to do it. It's probably one of the most mature decisions, and that's not a very high bar, most mature decisions a rock star could make. The second time he left in 1998, he needed hip replacement surgery. He wasn't sure that he was going to get the hip replacement surgery at that time, and the band made a fateful decision to move on without him, and they have been performing without him ever since. But I think what a lot of the fans and a lot of our listeners and viewers might be surprised to know is that he's still a co-owner of the company that controls the band, and he's still making money every time they go out there and perform those hits.
That's extraordinary. Yeah. So the situation they faced with trying to replace him, it not working out, even though they had clearly a talented performer, they go on a search of sorts, right? What take us through that? It's a pretty. I think it's a unique story. Maybe some other band did it, but I can't think of any other band that did it with the success that Journey did.
Oh, it truly is. It's an incredible story. So Steve Augeri had been caught lip syncing, and the band was behind him in this. That is to say, management and the technicians. They had been allowing him to lip sync on stage for some time by the time he left in 2006, because he had really just burned his voice out. Again, night after night, singing those songs that Perry could sing when he was 29, 30, 31 years old. Now Steve Augeri's in his late 40s trying to do that. That's pretty hard. And so when he was kind of burned out, he left the band. They briefly had a fellow, also from Brooklyn, New York, as I recall, Jeff Scott Soto. And then they let Jeff Scott Soto go for basically looking like he was going to turn Journey. He was going to do for Journey what Sammy Hagar did for Van Halen. And I think the powers that be in the band at that time, mainly guitarist Neil Schon, were just like, no, that's not happening.
So what does that mean? Can you flesh that out for those of us who might not know what that parallel is?
Well, the Hagar parallel, right. So Van Halen came to prominence out of Los Angeles with really two major rock stars, and they were Eddie Van Halen, the guitarist, and David Lee Roth, this flamboyant, over-the-top lead singer. Anyone can just go ahead and YouTube the video for Jump, for instance, or Hot for Teacher, and David Lee Roth's all over that. And he went off for a solo career, as Steve Perry did, right around the same time. And eventually Van Halen replaced him with Bay Area rock star Sammy Hagar. And Sammy kind of moved Van Halen in a somewhat different direction. He was not a clone of David Lee Roth by any stretch of the imagination, very different person. And so when Jeff Scott Soto became lead singer of Journey. He could sing all those Journey hits, but he also wanted to take it in a little bit of a different direction. And when he started saying that sort of thing to the press, Neil Schon, who believed very strongly that Journey's success lies in its catalog, in its hits that Steve Perry originated, he and his bandmates and management decided that that Jeff Scott Soto would have to go. This incidentally happened about 3 weeks before The Sopranos aired its final episode. And so when that episode came on, and Don't Stop Believin', downloads of Don't Stop Believin' increased sixfold just overnight, literally overnight. I mean, the day before that show aired, there were about 1,000 downloads on iTunes of that song, and the very next day there were more than 6,000 iTunes downloads just of that song, and they had no lead singer. And so Neil Schon was looking on YouTube, and he was just going through tribute band lead singer and other tribute band lead singer and cover singers and anyone he could possibly find. And then he saw this grainy video of this seemingly kid who was actually in his 30s already in the Philippines, Arnel Pineda. And Arnel was in a cover band at the time called The Zoo, playing in places like Hard Rock Manila, and doing covers of all sorts of songs. I mean, he's a chameleon, Arnel. He doesn't just do Steve Perry's voice. When you ask him to sing anything by Pete Cetera of Chicago, and he'll belt that out. You mentioned REO Speedwagon. He can do REO Speedwagon, Mark, better than Kevin Cronin these days, perhaps. But they found him, and they got the papers in order, and they brought him in from the Philippines, and it has been an incredible resurgence for Journey ever since December of 2007, when Arnel Pineda became the official lead singer for Journey.
So help me with then the big explosion once he joined the band. Was that because so many people, got wind of this story and thought it was really cool? Was it because he was from the Pacific Rim, if you will, and you had all of that built-in audience now? What helped Journey with this? I mean, it's like a supersonic rise they took again.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the first part that you mentioned is it is an incredibly compelling story. It attracted the likes of Oprah Winfrey, among other people, and they got a spot on Oprah's show. It must have been the second to the last or the last season at that point. She was wrapping up her career there, and he went on and he talked about, and when we talk about Steve Perry's rags to riches story, and Steve Perry was literally a starving artist in the 1970s before he joined Journey. Arnel Pineda was a homeless street kid growing up in the back streets of Manila in the Philippines, an orphan, and drinking and bathing in a water fountain in Luneta Park. You've got the shot right up there on the screen there of their Oprah Winfrey show. I mean, it's hard to watch that without breaking down in tears. And that moment really reintroduced Journey, I think. The combination of them and Arnel and being on Oprah reintroduced Journey to the American audience. It was another factor was that the millennials were reaching an age, and the millennials are a huge generation. They're bigger than the baby boomers, and when they decide they like music, that music is liked and that music is big. And so the millennials at that point decided they liked Journey, perhaps to a great extent because of Arnel. The immigrant community here in the United States has found a way to like Journey because of Arnel, because he is an immigrant and he is a person of color. To see him fronting this band that in the early 2000s was basically known for rocking the red states, and it's a different, very different dynamic. And then there's the entire Pacific market, as you mentioned. Being able to go back across, and not when I say the Pacific Rim, I don't just mean East Asia. I mean, their first major concert with Arnel was down in Chile.
Wow.
And so it's the entire, there's just all sorts of markets that have reopened to them as a result of that.
It's a remarkable story. And having seen Journey, I thought I want to say they might have been paired on the bill with, I don't know if this is right, Foreigner opening for them, but what's left of Foreigner type thing. I think there's one. Lou Gramm left it long ago. He's a brilliant, front man, of course, and yes, rock vocalist. But anyway, more to the point, I think Journey was at the Hollywood Bowl. I don't know who opened for them, but it's not important. In any case, I oftentimes get caught in these details that are totally meaningless. But just in the scene I'm trying to remember exactly. He spoke beautifully and frankly and openly about his rise into the band Journey. I mean, he talks about the fact that I was a kid with nothing, living in the streets, and you can't help but be moved by that. Now, I mean, he's speaking to the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, it's this immense place that's packed to the gills with fans, and yet you just can only love them more as a result of this story.
Yes, I can't say it any better than that.
So now to the Journey arc. They continue to do are they recording new music?
Well, as I talk about in my book, Livin Just to Find Emotion, Journey and the Story of American Rock, yes, indeed. They released an album in the summer of 22, which was recorded during the pandemic from various locations. I don't want to necessarily say via Zoom, but it was all via remote. They all did their parts in different home studios. They wrote together on the telephone and via Zoom and put together this album. It's a decent album. It's a good album. It's not quite up to the level of their hits. It is their first album in 10 years. They've now done 3 albums with Arnell. The first one, Revelation, came out in 2008, and that went platinum. That sold 1 million copies. And then in 2011, they released Eclipse, and now in 2022, Freedom.
Yeah, this book is in celebration of Journey's 50th anniversary. Wow. Let me just double back for a quick second in my last minute or two with you and ask you about clashes in the band. I mean, we talked a lot about how they were looking to replace Steve Perry, et cetera. When the time came, he left the band, et cetera. But there were other strong personalities, you mentioned Neil Schon, et cetera, who were big creative forces in the band Journey. Were there clashes, and was it creative clashes, or were there personality clashes, or both? Or
So the creative clashes that largely took place in the mid-1980s when Steve Perry kind of returned from his solo career and moved the band in a different direction than it had been previously. A little bit less rock, a little bit more Motown, a little bit more soul, more ballads, fewer rockers, that sort of direction. And as a result, founding bass player Ross Valerie left the band, and longtime drummer Steve Smith was fired from the band at that time. But most of their clashes have actually not had to do with musical differences. They've had to do, frankly, with money and who gets the profits from all the T-shirts that we're buying and that sort of thing. And they've been suing each other on and off since 1980, if you could believe it, when drummer Ainsley Dunbar, I'm not going to say founding drummer because there was one person there for a couple of months in 73, but original drummer, let's call him, because he was there for the first few albums. Remarkable drummer, had been with David Bowie, had been with Frank Zappa, had been with Mayall and the Blues Breakers back in England, out of Liverpool, Ainsley Dunbar. And when he was fired in 78, they defrauded him of his shares in the band's corporation. And he sued.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah. Well, the band's corporation is called Nightmare Productions, so that may give you some sense of what it is to deal with them. But right on up till they just settled a lawsuit with between, I believe, Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon were suing each other. I think they settled that last December 2023.
Wow.
The big one, of course, was in 2020. 2 longtime members who are actually members from the classic era of the band were fired contradictory to the law or against the contract, I guess you could say.
I see.
So they countersued, and it was a long, drawn-out process. Yeah.
You realize all of these guitarists and vocalists that were part of things. One of our listeners asking about, is it Greg Rowley from Santana's band who came over? Because Neil Schon was part of Santana's band also, right?
That's right. Neil Schon joined Santana with what is called Santana 3, although technically it was called Santana again, but we often refer to it as the third album or Santana 3. Greg Raleigh was one of the founders of Santana when it was called the Santana Blues Band. And he was the fellow who sang Black Magic Woman, and he sang Everybody's Everything up on that stage at Woodstock. Yeah, Greg Raleigh was with Journey from the moment of their origin right on up until December of 1980, that sad month that I think we all remember, where we lost that great Beatle, John Lennon. But Greg Raleigh left Journey that month exhausted from touring, exhausted from the road, and he newly married and ready to go be a parent for the first time. And but it worked out incredibly well for Journey because they replaced Greg with Jonathan Cain, who very quickly became the band's chief songwriter, responsible for such great hits as Don't Stop Believin', Who's Crying Now, Open Arms, Faithfully, Separate Ways, Be Good to Yourself, When You Love a Woman. We could just go on and on and on.
You are amazing. I could talk to you forever, David Hamilton Golland, and your book is, again, just a check. Can you throw it up there again, Tony? Livin Just to Find Emotion, Journey and the Story of American Rock. I mean, you're such a great historian of this very complicated and intriguing and powerful thing, which is music. And I'm so honored that we had a chance to talk to you, and I really wish you all the best with the book. Come back anytime. Livin Just to Find Emotion. We'll have a link. Do you have where's it being? It's being sold everywhere, or I mean, we can have a link to Amazon, wherever you want.
Well, I think the Roman and Littlefield website might be a good link for you all to put up there.
JourneyHistoryBook.com. Will that
JourneyHistoryBook.com works. That's
Tony, can you put that in? JourneyHistoryBook.com. We'll put it into this description, and people can just go there for more. JourneyHistoryBook.com.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, so good. Hey, David Hamilton Golland, good luck with the book, and what a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Mark. You have a great day.
You too. So long.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow, I can't believe that was a great conversation. He's something. That book is going to be great. Livin Just to Find Emotion, Journey and the Story of American Rock. Tony, you're going to hook up a link so that listeners and viewers can find more.
It should be a big seller in the Bay Area, don't you think?
Oh, my God, yes. Yeah, Bay Area band that's, it's one, as I say, exploded multiple times. Like, who would have thought that after their insane success in the 80s, I guess it was the late 70s and 80s, that there would be this supernova of success after they replaced Steve Perry. Wow. I mean, really something. So tomorrow, Kim, it's Valentine's Day. No pressure.
Oh, are we going to celebrate?
Well, in a sense, we'll celebrate. It'll be filled with love, I promise you. And John Rothman will be by as well. Kim does the after party next.
Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, everybody.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Until tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thanks, Kim.